Hello students, I hope that all of you are doing good. So today we would be going through the chapter 8 of the class 8 standard NCERT science book, that is cell structure and its function. So in this chapter we would be learning how the cell was discovered, and we would be learning about different scientists who are associated with cell. Then we would be learning about how the organisms, they show a variety in the cell number, shape and their size. Also, we would be learning about different structures of the cell and their particular function. Also, we would be learning about parts of the cell and how a plant cell it differs from a animal cell. We would be also going through that. So now let's start with this video lecture. So discovery of the cell. So basic structural unit of an organ, it is the cell. So the basic structural unit, it is the cell. So cells in the living organisms are the basic structural unit. So a question can come, which are the basic structural units in our body? So the answer would be easy, very easy, that is cells. So Robert Hooke was a scientist who observed slices of cork under a simple magnifying device. So here we can see that he observed like this the brick wall and the onion peel under the microscope. So now let's move on to the next slide. So from discovery of cell, the following questions can be asked. Now let's go through this, match the following question, and let's go through this concept of the discovery of cell, which will be understanding with the help of this question. So Robert Hooke, in the previous slide we understood that he observed some slices of cork. So what was the significance of his observation? Let's go through it. So Robert Hooke, Anton van Leeuwenhoek, R. Wichro, and Matthias Kelden and Theodor Schwann. So all these scientists, they are closely related with the discovery of cell. So Anton van Leeuwenhoek, what he did was that, let's go through this. All of these are the findings of all of these scientists. Now let's go through that. So first of all cells arise from the pre-existing cells. So this was given by this scientist who was known as R. Virchow. So B we should match with 3. So there is only one option in which the B is matching with 3. So that is option number B. So from only one option I was able to get the correct answer. So Robert Hooke. So we in the previous slide we had gone through that he observed the cork slices. So what was the significance of that? So the significance of that was that he had coined the term that is cell. So one, it is D. So second, Anton van Leeuwenhoek. So what did he do? So he saw and described the first living cell. So second, it will be matched with C. Third, we have undergone that R. Virchow. He was the first one that postulated that all cells arise from pre-existing cells. Then the fourth one, that is Matthias Kelden and Theodor Schwann. So these scientists, they gave the cell theory. So the correct sequence will be the B option. So from this single question we were also able to understand the different role of scientists in the discovery of cell. So now let's move on to the next slide. So cell number. So cells, they can be divided into two types on the basis of cell number. So first one, it is multicellular, and the second one would be unicellular. So the name itself, it is suggesting multicellular. That is, organisms, when they are made up of more than one cells, then they are known as multicellular organisms. Whereas unicellular organisms are those where they are made from only a single cell. So multicellular organisms, they are humans and dogs, whereas unicellular organisms, they are amoeba and paramecium. So here we can see the diagram of amoeba. This A1, this is amoeba, and this one it is paramecium. So we can see only a single body, it's single cell, it is constituting the whole body of these organisms. So that is why they are known as unicellular organisms. So now let's move on to the next slide. So shape of cells. So cells can be also characterized with the help of their shape. So amoeba, it has no definite shape unlike other organisms. So amoeba, it has a irregular shape. So the change in shape of amoeba, it is due to the formation of pseudopodia. That means pseudo, it means false. So pseudo, it means false, whereas podia, it means feet. So the irregular shape of the amoeba, it is because of the pseudopodia, that is the false feet of amoeba. So this pseudopodia, it facilitates the movement of amoeba and it helps in capturing food. So pseudopodia, it is involved in the movement of amoeba, and second, it is helping it to capture food. Thus, because of the pseudopodia, that is mean that the meaning of pseudopodia, it is false feet. The amoeba, it doesn't have a definite shape. That is, it has irregular shape. So, a white blood cell in human blood is another example of a single cell which can change its shape. So, in our body, the white blood cells that are present. So, basically, white blood cells, they provide immunity to our body. So, these white blood cells, they can also change their shape in our body. So cells are round, spherical or elongated. Some cells are long and pointed at both ends and they exhibit a spindle shape. So cells, they can be round, spherical or elongated, as well as some cells can be long and they can be pointed at both ends. So they then exhibit a spindle shape. So cells sometimes are quite long. Some are branched. So this is very important point, that some cells, they are branched. Now let's go through them. Which all cells are the branch cells? So some cells, they are long and they are branched, like the nerve cell or a neuron. So this is very important, that a nerve cell and neuron, they are branched cells. So the nerve cell, they receive and transfer messages, thereby helping to control and coordinate the working of different parts of the body. So now let's move on to the next slide. So now let's go through the different shape of the cells. So here we have the spherical red blood cells of human beings. So the red blood cells, they are example of spherical cells. These are the red blood cells. So in the B image, we have the spindle shaped cells of the muscle cells. So B image, it is spindle shaped and it is the example of the muscle cells. And the option C and the C option, here we have the long branched nerve cells. So nerve cells, they are branched and they are long. They are long and branched because they need to convey the messages from the brain to various other parts of the body. So the movement of the body and everything, it can be coordinated and regulated in an easy manner. So these are the characteristic of the nerve cell. So spherical cell, we have the red blood cell. The spindle shaped cells are our muscle cells, and the long and branched cells are our nerve cells. So this slide, it is very important and questions can be asked from this. So now let's move on to the next slide. So size of the cells. So the size of the cells in a living organisms may be small as a millionth of a meter, that is micrometer or micron. It can be as small as micrometer or micron, or it may be as large as a few centimeters. So, however, most of the cells, they are microscopic in size. So that means that we cannot see the cells from our naked eyes. We need a microscope in order to see that type of cells, and they are not visible to the unaided eye. So they need to be enlarged or magnified with the help of a microscope. So the smallest cell, it is 0.1 to 0.5 micrometer in bacteria. So the largest cell, it measures around 170 mm into 130 mm. That is the egg of a ostrich. So egg of a ostrich, it has the largest cell, we can say, and the smallest cell we have of the bacteria, that is 0.1 to 0.5 micrometer. And for the egg of the ostrich, it measures around 170 millimeter into 130 millimeter. So now let's move on to the next slide. So cell structure and function. So each organ, it is made up of smaller parts that is named as tissue. So organ, it is made up of smaller parts that is named as tissues. So tissue, it is a group of similar cells. So it is very important that a tissue, it is a group of similar cells performing a specific function. So tissue, it is a group of similar cells, and these cells, they perform a similar function that is specific in nature. So the cell in the living organism, it is the basic structural unit. So now here we can see the diagram of the human cheek cells. So these cells are present in our cheek. So here it is labeled, we have the nucleus here, the central part. Here the liquid part that we have, it is the cytoplasm. The nucleus, it is surrounded by here by the nuclear membrane, and here we can see the cell membrane at the outside. So now let's move on to the next slide. Cell membrane. So the basic components of the cell are cell membrane, cytoplasm and nucleus. So the cytoplasm and nucleus, they are enclosed within the cell membrane. Also it is known as simply membrane. So cytoplasm and nucleus, they are enclosed within the membrane. So plasma membrane, it separates the cells from one another and also the cells from the surrounding medium. So plasma membrane, it is separating the cells from one another and also the cells from the surroundings medium. So the plasma membrane, it is porous. So plasma membrane, it is very important. The plasma membrane, it is porous and it allows the movement of substances or materials both inward and outward. So this is a very important point, that the plasma membrane, it is porous, and because it is porous, it is able to, because of this property that it is porous, it allows the movement of the substances or materials both towards the inside and also outside of the cell. So now let's move on to the next slide. So cell membrane. Let's understand this part of the cell now. So the boundary of the onion cell, it is the cell membrane that is covered by another thick covering called the cell wall. So the central dense round body in the center, it is known as the nucleus. So the jelly-like substance between the nucleus and the cell membrane, it is known as the cytoplasm. So in addition to the cell membrane, there is another outer thick cells that is known as the cell wall. So cell wall, it is required by the plants for protection against variations in temperature, high wind speed, atmospheric moisture and so on. So cell wall, it is absent in the animal cells. So this is a very important difference between the plant cell and the animal cell, that the plant cell, they have the cell wall that helps them to protect themselves against high temperature, high wind speed, atmospheric moisture and so on, whereas it is absent in the animal cells. So now let's move on to the next slide. So gene, let us understand what is meant by gene. So gene, it is a unit of inheritance in living organisms. So gene, it is a unit of inheritance. So it controls the transfer of hereditary characteristics from parents to the offspring. So if suppose your father has brown eyes, so there is high chances that you may also have brown eyes. Because your father has genes of this brown eyes, so it is acting as a unit of inheritance. So this eye color, it is getting passed from your father to yourself. That is, you are the progeny of your father. So that is why the hereditary characteristic, that is the eye color, it is getting transferred from the father to son. So if in the same manner, if your mother has curly hair, then you have high chances of having curly hair, because the gene for curly hair, it is getting transferred from the mother to son or daughter. So however, the different combinations of gene from parents results in different characteristics. If there are different characteristics, that is because of the genes are inherited from both the father and mother. So because of that, the progeny, it may have the different characteristics also. So now let's move on to the next slide. So cytoplasm, what is meant by cytoplasm? So it is the jelly-like substance that is present between the cell membrane and the nucleus. So various other components or organelles of cells are present in the cytoplasm. So these are mitochondria, Golgi bodies, ribosomes. So now let's move on to the next slide. So nucleus. So nucleus, it is the spherical and it is located in the center of the cell. So nucleus, it is separated from the cytoplasm by a membrane that is known as the nuclear membrane. So nuclear membrane is also porous and it allows the movement of the materials between the cytoplasm and inside of the nucleus. So nucleolus, it consists of a smaller spherical body in the nucleus. So nucleus contains thread-like structures known as the chromosomes. So these carry genes and they help in inheritance or transfer of characters from the parents to the offspring. So the chromosomes can be seen only when the cell divides. So now let's move on to the next slide. So nucleus. So nucleus, in addition to its role in inheritance, it acts as the control center of the activities of the cell. So the entire content of a living cell, it is known as the protoplasm. So the protoplasm, it includes the cytoplasm as well as the nucleus. So protoplasm, it is known as the living substance of the cell. So now let's move on to the next slide. So now it is this slide, it is very important, and so it is time to understand the difference between a prokaryotic cell and a eukaryotic cell. So this slide, it is very important. So let's start with the prokaryotic cell. So prokaryotic, basically it is made up of two words, that is pro and karyon. So pro basically means primitive and karyons, it means nucleus. So primitive nucleus. Whereas eukaryotic, it is made up of the words eu and karyon. So eu basically means true and karyon, it means nucleus. So the nucleus of the bacterial cells, it is not well organized like the cells of multicellular organisms. So mostly the unicellular organisms, they are prokaryotic. So the nucleus of the bacterial cells, it is not well organized. Whereas the cells of the eukaryotic cells, such as the onion cells and the cheek cells of human beings, they have well organized nucleus. So there is also no nuclear membrane in the prokaryotic cell, whereas eukaryotes, they have a nuclear membrane. So the examples of prokaryotic cells are bacteria and blue-green algae, and dog and human beings are the examples that have the eukaryotic cells. So now let's move on to the next slide. So this slide, it shows us the image of the prokaryotic cell. Here we can see that the prokaryotic cell, it is a basic type of cell, whereas eukaryotes, they have more features. So here we have a prokaryotic cell and here we have the eukaryotic cell. So now let's move on to the next slide. So vacuoles. So vacuoles are spaces in the cell that is vacant or cytoplasm. So vacuoles, they do not have cytoplasm. So they are lined with membrane and they are filled up with the fluid. So cheek cells, they have smaller vacuoles. So large vacuoles are common in plant cells. So vacuoles in animal cells are much smaller. So plastids, they are responsible for manufacturing and storing of food. So these often contain pigments that are used in photosynthesis and different types of pigment that can change the color of the cell. So green colored plastids, they are known as chloroplast. So plastids green pigment, it is known as the chlorophyll. So they provide green color to the leaves. So chlorophyll in the chloroplast or the leaves is essential for photosynthesis. So now let's move on to the next slide. So this slide, it is very important. We must know the difference between the plant cell and the animal cell. So plant cells, they are larger as compared to animal cells. So animal cells, they are smaller as compared to the plant cells. So the plant cell wall, it is present outside the plasma membrane. So the plant cells, they have a cell wall, whereas there is no cell wall in the animal cell. So plastid, it is present in the plant cells. So in the previous slide itself, we have learned about the plastids, that is the chloroplast. Whereas plastids, it is absent in the animals. Animal cells do not have plastids. So centrosome, it is absent in the plant cell. There is no centrosome in the plant cells, whereas in animal cells, centrosomes are present. So vacuoles are large in the plant cells. So vacuoles are those regions where there is no cytoplasm. So vacuoles are small or either absent in the animal cell. So this slide, it is very important and we need to by heart it. So now let's move on to the next slide. So this is a diagrammatic representation of the plant cell and the animal cell. So the most important difference between the plant and animal cells, it is the cell wall. So plant cells, they have a cell wall, whereas the animal cells, it doesn't have a cell wall. So there is no cell wall in the animal cells. So plant cells, they have chloroplast, whereas it is absent here in the animal cell. So animal cells, they have centrosome. So the centrosome, it is absent in the plant cell. Rest all of the most of the things, they are then similar. It is present in the plant cell as well as in the animal cells. All the other parts, such as nucleus, so the vacuole, cytoplasm, ribosome, it is common in plant cell and animal cell. So the most important difference, it is the cell wall. It is present in plant cell and it is absent in the animal cell. So now let's move on to the next slide. So now we need to choose the correct level of organization in the multicellular organism. So we have tissues. The first one here, it is mentioned tissues. So we know that the tissues, they are made from cells. So yes, we can cut option C and D also. Correct option would be B. Cells, so the similar kind of cells, they combine together and they form the tissue. Tissues, they form the organs. The organs, they form the organ system, and the organ system, it leads to the organism. So now let's move on to the next slide. So now we need to match the following. So amoeba. So amoeba, we know that the most characteristic feature of amoeba, it is the irregular shape of amoeba because of the pseudopodia that is present in the amoeba. So pseudopodia, it means false feet, right? So A, it will be irregular shape. So A1, Here we have, so B we can cut. So C and D also have A as 1. So red blood cells of human, we know that it is spherical in shape. So B will be fourth. So we can cut A because B is 2 there. So nerve cell, we know that it is long and it is branched. So that is third one. C, it is third. So the correct answer I have got here. D we can cut. Correct option it is C. So muscle cell, it is spindle shaped. So yes, the correct answer it is C. So now let's move on to the next slide. So now we need to match the following. So chloroplast. So chloroplast, it is the site of the photosynthesis. So A, it is third. So I have got the answer from a single option itself. So that is what is the plus point of the match the following type of questions. From a single, if we even know a single option, so we can get the whole answer. So A, I know that it is the site of photosynthesis, chloroplast. So correct option it is C, because A is matching with 3 only in this option C. So cell membrane, it controls the movement of materials into and out of the cells because it is porous. So B, it would be fourth. Nucleus, it is controls the activities of cell. Nucleus, it controls the activities of cell. So it would be second one. So chromosome, it carries the hereditary characters. So D, it would be 1. So correct answer it would be C. So now let's move on to the next slide. So now we need to identify the labeling that is provided in this cell. So A, we know that this is the outermost part, that is the cell wall. So from the A option itself, I can eliminate all the other options. So correct option it would be A itself. So B here, further we have the cell membrane. C here, this is representing the nucleus. D here, this is a jelly-like substance, that is the cytoplasm. E here, where there is no cytoplasm. So no cytoplasm is present in the vacuole. That is, so E, it would be vacuole. So correct option it is A. So now let's move to the next slide. So we need to indicate whether the following statements are true or they are false. So unicellular organisms, they have one cell body. So yes, we have learned this in the previous slides. It is true. So muscle cells, they are branched. So this is an incorrect statement because we know that the nerve cells, they are branched. Nerve cells are branched and they are long. Whereas muscle cells, they are spindle shaped. They are spindle shaped. So they are shaped like this. They are at both ends, they are pointed. So muscle cells are like this. They are not branched. So they are unbranched. Muscle cells, they are unbranched. So this statement, it becomes false. So the basic unit of an organism is an organ. So this is false because we know that the basic unit of an living organism, it is the cell. So amoeba has irregular shape. So this is true, and it has the irregular shape because of the pseudopodia that is present. So pseudopodia, it helps the amoeba to capture food. Capture food, as well as it helps in the movement of the amoeba. So pseudopodia, it basically, pseudo, it means false, and podia, it means feet. So it means false feet. So now let's move to the next slide. So amoeba, it has, so this statement, it is true. Amoeba, it has a irregular shape because of the pseudopodia. So now let's move on to the next slide. So this was all in this video lecture. Hope you liked it. Thank you for your valuable time.